The click of that padlock echoed louder than any scream I'd heard in years. One sharp sound. Final. Irreversible. And on the other side of my gate? 100 dressed-up wedding guests slowly realizing they were trapped. Car horns started blaring almost instantly. Luxury SUVs lined up nose to tail on the dirt road leading to my property, engines idling, exhaust mixing with the smell of lake water and summer heat. Then came the screaming. Not from the guests. From her. HOA President Karen Whitmore. She slammed both palms against my steel gate like it personally betrayed her. Designer leggings soaked through with sweat. Perfect hair coming undone. Phone shoved inches from the security camera as she shrieked. I have rights! You can't do this! But I already had. My name is Marcus Rivera. 3 months ago, I was a laid-off aerospace engineer watching my savings evaporate and my career stall out. Then my grandfather's lawyer called and flipped my life upside down. 40 acres of lakefront land in Texas. Fully paid. Zero debt. Old deeds. Older rights. The kind of inheritance people fight wars over. What no one warned me about was the HOA. Millbrook Estates wraps itself around my property like a bad habit. Beige McMansions. Manicured lawns. People who believe price tags equal power. Their HOA president, Karen Whitmore, had been terrorizing property owners for years before I ever showed up. Bogus fines. Threats. Fake documents. She treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. From day one, she hated me. She wanted my lake. My dock. My land. She wanted to host massive, community events on it and call it shared property. When I said no, politely, calmly, legally, she escalated. Fines started appearing. $500 here. $1,000 there. Claims that my fence violated imaginary codes. Even my tires mysteriously slashed one night. I documented everything. Cameras. Logs. Dates. Then she crossed the line. She scheduled her daughter's $30,000 lakeside engagement party on my property without permission. Caterers. Bands. Valet parking. Invitation sent. She told people it was community access lakefront. She assumed I'd cave under pressure. That I wouldn't dare embarrass her. So at 6 a.m., the morning of the party, I walked to my gate and locked it. By 8 a.m., chaos. Guests arrived in waves, dressed in linen and sunglasses, confused as security turned them away. Phones came out. Tempers rose. And Karen? She completely lost control. On camera. Screaming about lawsuits, police, and how people like me don't belong here. She pounded on my door like a debt collector. Threatened to destroy me. Promised fines so big-eyed. Wish I never inherited this place. What she didn't know, what she never bothered to check, was that my grandfather didn't just build this property in 1962. He secured ironclad water and access rights that predated Millbrook Estates by decades. Rights that made her HOA rules meaningless the moment they touched my land. And while she was screaming about her rights, I was reviewing mine. Standing on my porch, watching her melt down on my security feed, I realized something terrifying for her. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a trap she walked into willingly. And I was about to let her pull every ounce of rope herself. Because the gate wasn't the punishment. It was the warning. By 8:17 a.m., Karen Whitmore stopped screaming and started threatening. That's when I knew I'd won the first round. Her voice changed. Lower. Sharper. The kind of tone people use when they believe authority will save them. She leaned into my security camera and said slowly, Marcus, you are in serious violation of HOA authority. Unlock this gate immediately or we will take action. Action. That word again. Behind her, the illusion was collapsing. Guests in expensive dresses were stepping out of Range Rovers, heels sinking into gravel. A valet stood frozen, unsure whether to keep pretending this was planned. The catering truck tried to turn around and nearly clipped a mailbox. Phones were everywhere now. Recording. whispering. Confusion turning into anger. Karen turned back to the crowd and forced a smile so tight it looked painful. Small access issue, she chirped. Just a technical delay. But her hands were shaking. Sweat streaked through her makeup. Control was slipping, and she felt it. Here's what she didn't understand. I wasn't improvising. 2 years earlier, after the first bogus fine hit my mailbox, I'd done what engineers do. I researched. I pulled records. I visited the county clerk, then the water district, then the historical survey office. Dusty maps. Yellow deeds. Handwritten easements from the 1950s. My grandfather didn't just buy land. He anticipated encroachment. Millbrook Lake is spring-fed. In Texas, that matters. Especially when private access predates subdivisions. My grandfather secured exclusive shoreline and access rights tied to the original land survey. No HOA. No implied use. No community override. The lake touching my land was legally mine to control. Karen never checked. She assumed HOA power was universal. Back at the gate, she started dialing. Loudly. Police. HOA attorneys. Anyone who would listen. I let her. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee refilled, watching the live feed on my tablet like it was a show written just for me. Then the police arrived. 2 cruisers. Calm. Professional. Karen sprinted to them like a lifeline, talking over herself, waving papers, pointing at my gate as if it were a crime scene. I stepped outside slowly, deeds folder in hand. No shouting. No insults. Just facts. The officers listened. To both of us. One of them asked a simple question. Is this your private property? Yes, I said, and handed him the documents. He read. His partner leaned in. Karen kept interrupting, insisting the HOA overruled all of this. The older officer finally looked up and said, Ma'am, HOA rules don't supersede recorded property and water rights. The silence after that was beautiful. The officer turned back to me. Sir, you're within your rights to deny access. This is a civil matter. Then he looked at Karen. You'll need to clear the road. These vehicles can't block emergency access. Karen's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She tried one last move. Claimed harassment. Claimed discrimination. Claimed I was ruining a once-in-a-lifetime event. The officers didn't budge. They'd seen entitlement before. This wasn't new. Guests started leaving. One by one. Angry. Embarrassed. Some demanding refunds. Some shouting at Karen. The band packed up without unloading. The catering truck drove off. And that's when Karen snapped again. She pointed at me and hissed. This isn't over. She was right. Because humiliating her in front of 100 witnesses wasn't my endgame. It was the spark. Within hours, my phone would start ringing. Letters would arrive. Fines would multiply. She was about to throw everything she had at me. And I was about to let her. Because now, I had her on record. On camera. On public display. And the law was finally paying attention. By nightfall, Karen Whitmore's meltdown was already circulating in private neighborhood group chats. By morning, it would be everywhere. I didn't post it. I didn't have to. Someone always leaks the footage when entitlement collapses in public. A guest. A neighbor. A friend, who suddenly decides distance is safer. My security clips, her screaming about rights, the police calmly correcting her, spread faster than any HOA notice ever had. And that's when the retaliation began. At 7:02 a.m. the next day, my inbox exploded. Violation notices. Emergency assessments. Noise complaints filed at 2 a.m. when I was asleep and my property was silent. They even fined me for unauthorized gate modifications. The same gate my grandfather installed before Karen was born. She was trying to bury me in paperwork. But this time, she made a fatal mistake. Every notice referenced HOA authority over my property. Authority they didn't have. Every letter was proof. Every fine was evidence. She wasn't just harassing me, she was documenting her own overreach. So I stopped responding. Instead, I hired an attorney who specialized in property and water rights. The kind who smiles when you bring him original surveys and decades-old deeds. He read through everything, leaned back, and said 4 words that made the whole mess worth it. She's incredibly exposed. Karen had violated state statutes, interfered with lawful access, filed fraudulent claims, and worst of all, she'd attempted to commercially use private land without consent by hosting that party. In Texas, that's not just an HOA issue. That's liability. We sent 1 letter. Not aggressive. Not threatening. Precise. A cease and desist. A demand to withdraw all fines. A notice of intent to pursue damages if harassment continued. She ignored it. Instead, she escalated again. 2 weeks later, contractors showed up at my fence line claiming they were hired by the HOA to survey future community access improvements. I called the sheriff. They left. Another incident on record. Then came the lien threat. That's when I decided to stop playing defense. My attorney filed first. A lawsuit naming Karen Whitmore personally. Not just the HOA. Personal liability for harassment, defamation, abuse of authority, and attempted property seizure. The filing included video footage, police reports, emails, fake documents, and witness statements from neighbors she'd bullied for years. The court scheduled a hearing. Karen panicked. She started backpedaling. Emails suddenly polite. Offers to resolve things amicably. HOA board members began resigning. One reached out anonymously, admitting Karen had been operating unchecked for years. The night before the hearing, I slept better than I had in months. In court, Karen didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She shrank. Her lawyer tried to argue community standards and implied access. The judge shut it down in minutes. Then came the question that ended everything. Can you show the court any legal authority granting the HOA access to Mr. Rivera's lakefront? They couldn't. The judge ruled in my favor. All fines voided. Harassment documented. Injunction issued. The HOA was barred from contacting me except through counsel. But that wasn't the real victory. During discovery, we uncovered something worse. Karen had used HOA funds to plan her daughter's party. Deposits. Vendors. Personal expenses charged as community events. That's not entitlement. That's fraud. And once that door opened, there was no closing it again. The fraud discovery changed everything. Overnight, Karen Whitmore stopped being a loud HOA bully and became a legal liability no one wanted to sit next to. Once my attorney subpoenaed the HOA's financial records, the story unraveled fast. Credit card statements. Reimbursement requests. Community improvement. Line items that somehow matched luxury catering invoices, valet services, and event rentals. Her daughter's engagement party wasn't an isolated lapse, it was a pattern. Board members claimed ignorance. That didn't save them. The HOA's insurance carrier got involved next. When insurers smell misused funds, they don't negotiate, they investigate. Coverage was suspended pending review. That single move sent panic through Millbrook Estates. No insurance meant every lawsuit, every accident, every claim would hit homeowners directly. Karen's support evaporated. Neighbors who once avoided her now handed over emails. Screenshots. Recordings. Stories of intimidation. Fines issued in purple ink. Threats whispered at doorsteps. One elderly couple admitted they paid thousands just to make her go away. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. Silence unnerves bullies more than confrontation. The hearing for Karen's removal as HOA president was scheduled on a Tuesday evening. Standing room only. Residents packed the clubhouse, whispering like spectators before a verdict. Karen arrived late, sunglasses on indoors, jaw clenched. She still believed she could talk her way out. She couldn't. One by one, board members spoke. then homeowners, then the HOA's own accountant. When the bank statements hit the screen, the room turned hostile. Gasps. Murmurs. A few people stood up and walked out. Karen tried to interrupt. The chair cut her off. The vote wasn't close. She was removed immediately. Access revoked. Authority stripped. The same power she'd abused for years vanished in under 5 minutes. But consequences don't stop at embarrassment. The county prosecutor reviewed the case next. Misappropriation of funds. Falsified documents. Potential criminal charges. Her attorney advised silence. The woman who once screamed about her rights suddenly had none to shout with. And then came the civil fallout. Multiple homeowners filed suit against the HOA for selective enforcement and harassment, citing my case as precedent. Property values dipped. Listings appeared. The perfect community reputation cracked. As for me, I finally exhaled. The lake was quiet again. No traffic. No notices taped to my door. Just water, wind, and the sound of oaks moving the way they always had. I repaired nothing out of spite. I changed nothing for them. I didn't need to. Karen Whitmore lost more than a party. She lost her image, her position, and her shield. The HOA learned a lesson it never wanted to learn. Some property lines don't bend, no matter how loud you shout. But the final twist? It came months later. A letter arrived from the HOA's new board. Different tone. Different language. An offer. They wanted to buy access rights to my shoreline. Legally. Permanently. For a number so high, it made me laugh out loud. They finally understood. You don't bully people who know the law. And you definitely don't threaten land that remembers its owners. I didn't answer their offer right away. Not because the number wasn't tempting. Because leverage is strongest when you let silence do the talking. For weeks, I watched Millbrook Estates struggle without Karen Whitmore. Board meetings ran long. Arguments spilled into driveways. Neighbors who once hid behind her authority were now forced to face each other. Without fear to unite them, cracks widened fast. The new HOA president, much quieter, much more careful, sent follow-up emails. Polite. Respectful. Almost apologetic. They emphasized how beneficial shared access could be for community harmony. Funny how language changes when power shifts. I responded with conditions. No easement without full legal recognition of my exclusive rights. No access without annual compensation. No events. Ever. And one more thing, a public acknowledgement that all past fines and actions against me were unlawful. They hesitated. So I waited. That's when Karen resurfaced. A process server showed up at my gate with new paperwork. Karen was suing me personally. Claiming emotional distress. Defamation. Loss of reputation. According to her filing, I had orchestrated her downfall. I laughed. My attorney didn't. He smiled. Because her lawsuit reopened discovery. And discovery is a dangerous thing when you've already lied under oath once. We countersued immediately. Added malicious prosecution. Abuse of process. Requested her personal financial records. Within 10 days, her attorney withdrew. The case collapsed before it began. Karen vanished from the neighborhood shortly after. House listed. Price slashed. Sold under market. No farewell. No explanation. Just gone. That was the moment the HOA caved. They accepted every condition. The agreement was signed quietly. No celebration. No press. Just a clean contract acknowledging reality. I retained full control. The HOA paid for limited, regulated access at a rate that covered my taxes, maintenance, and then some. And the gate? It stayed. I still lock it every night. Because the lesson wasn't about money. It was about boundaries. About knowing when politeness becomes permission, and silence becomes surrender. HOAs rely on one thing above all else: people not pushing back. Not checking records. Not understanding the power they already have. Karen Whitmore thought shouting made her untouchable. It made her visible. Now when I sit on my dock at sunrise, coffee in hand, lake glassy and calm, I don't think about fines or lawsuits. I think about my grandfather. The foresight he had. The patience. The quiet confidence. He knew something Karen never learned. Land doesn't respect titles. It respects truth. And truth, documented properly, wins every time. Life settled into something close to peace after that. Not the fake calm HOAs advertise in glossy brochures, but real quiet. Earned quiet. Millbrook Estates stopped pretending I was a problem. Instead, they treated my property like a border they didn't want to test again. New residents were warned. Real estate agents whispered, "That lakefront isn't HOA land." The myth finally died. But consequences have a way of rippling outward. 6 months after Karen disappeared, I was contacted by 3 different homeowners. Different streets. Same story. They'd paid fines they never owed. Been threatened with liens. Forced into compliance projects that magically used Karen's preferred contractors. They wanted to know how I fought back. So I showed them. Not by yelling. Not by protesting. By pulling records. We uncovered patterns, selective enforcement, falsified violation dates, identical wording copied across dozens of fines. One couple found a violation notice dated 2 days before they bought their house. Another homeowner discovered HOA fees charged to a property still under construction. The HOA's legal counsel resigned shortly after. Smart move. What followed wasn't dramatic. It was devastating in a quieter way. Class action talks. Mediation. Settlements. Refunds. The HOA's reserves drained fast. Dues went up. Property values dipped further. Suddenly, community standards felt very expensive. And me? I stayed out of it. That part confused people. They expected revenge. Expected me to lead the charge. But my fight had never been about domination, it was about defense. Once my boundary was respected, my role was done. One evening, an older neighbor named Dale, who'd watched Karen bully residents for years, walked over while I was fixing a dock cleat. He thanked me. Said seeing someone finally say, "No," gave others permission to stand up too. That stuck with me. HOA power depends on isolation. They pick people off one at a time. Make each resident feel alone, ignorant, replaceable. The moment someone proves that's not true, the spell breaks. Karen Whitmore thrived on fear. She collapsed under documentation. The irony? If she'd left me alone, none of this would have happened. Her daughter would have had her party somewhere appropriate. The HOA would have continued quietly overreaching. And I would have remained just another guy behind a fence. But entitlement doesn't stop voluntarily. A year later, I received one final piece of news. Karen's criminal case concluded. No prison. But fines. Restitution. A permanent ban from serving on any HOA board in the state. Her name now appears in public records tied to fraud. That's a heavy legacy. Sometimes I still replay that morning, the padlock clicking shut, the crowd frozen in confusion, Karen screaming about rights she never had. It wasn't anger I felt then. It was certainty. The certainty that knowing your ground, literally and legally, is the most powerful position there is. And if you're wondering whether I regret embarrassing her, I don't. Because she didn't see people. She saw property. And property, when it's truly yours, doesn't need permission to be protected. The lake looks different when you know it can't be taken from you. Calmer. Wider. Honest. Some mornings, when the mist hangs low and the water barely moves, I think about how close I came to losing more than just peace. One unchecked signature. One ignored document. One moment of intimidation accepted as normal, and my grandfather's legacy could have been slowly erased. That's how it usually happens. Not with bulldozers or police lights. But with small concessions. One fine paid to avoid stress. One rule followed even when it doesn't apply. HOAs don't need to win big. They just need you to stop checking. I didn't beat Karen Whitmore because I was louder. I beat her because I was patient. Every camera I installed. Every letter I saved. Every map I requested from a dusty county office. That was the real fight. The padlock was just the finale people saw. Millbrook Estates still exists. It always will. HOAs don't disappear, they adapt. New presidents. New slogans. Same structure. But now there's a quiet rule everyone understands. My gate stays closed unless I open it. And when new neighbors move in, I see the looks. Curiosity. Caution. Sometimes relief. They've heard the story. The version that gets passed around like a warning label. Not because I wanted fame, but because stories travel when power fails. I never set out to humiliate someone. I set out to protect what was mine. The strange part? After everything, I'm grateful. Karen forced me to learn the law instead of assuming it worked. She reminded me that ownership isn't about what people say, it's about what you can prove. So if you're watching this dealing with an HOA that feels untouchable, hear this clearly. They only feel powerful because you haven't looked closely yet. Pull the records. Read the deeds. Check the dates. Install the cameras. And never assume someone else's confidence means they're right. Because sometimes the loudest person in the room is standing on ground they don't own. And when the gate finally closes on them, all that's left is silence. The good kind.